Go ahead. Oh, hello. I was just about to start it. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. For our virtual Pilgrims at the Creek Gallery talk. Today, we'll be hearing from artists Lauren Wack and Jonathan Chandler. So, just here on this first slide, we included just a few photos of the hallway that everything is hung up in. Just a reminder that the municipal building is open pretty much every working day. So you can just go up there. Families coming to town, you can take them there. I've done that, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Before we get started proper, I also wanted to point everybody to the online gallery that the city's put together. I know it's a bit of a long URL. But if you just hello, if you just Google artwork archive Pilgrims at the Creek, you'll find it. The top of the page kind of looks like the left part here, and then you can scroll a really big gallery and see all. All right, can everyone hear me? Can? Okay. All right. Just wanted to double check. All right. Um, okay, excellent. All right. So, oh, here, you know what? I can actually pull up the online gallery really quick and I'll paste the URL in the chat. It's, the URL is in the chat. Oh, we're back. Excellent. And here we've got a few pictures from our first gallery talk, which was a lot of fun. Got Polly Branch over here, Ashley Wilson Fellers, Julie Kin with her little travel harp, and then here's the elevators. If you haven't been there yet as of yet. So yeah, I guess if you all want to get started, Jonathan, I think I have you first. I just did it by alphabetical order. So here we've got your piece, hidden in plain sight, and uh, I didn't get the measurements beforehand. How large would you say it is? 2 feet?
I think I've got that. Um, Measurements are approximately 30 inches tall, 12 inches by 12 inches wide. That's at the base, of course.
Excellent. Yeah. So here we've got it on a little podium. And yeah, I'll hand it over to you if you want to tell us about your process in making it, your thoughts, kind of how you got to where it is, just whatever you'd like to share with us today. Totally frozen. Oops.
I think he's frozen. He has the phone number. He can dial in.
Okay. Oops.
Might want
Yes,
to go ahead and
we had a bit of a feedback issue with the call and
if he turns
the
his even if he turned his computer off, I'll call him and work through it.
okay.
Go
Well,
ahead.
we had everything stable. Like he sounded very good and the connection was good with the video. So this is unfortunate. Okay, well, I guess in that case, while we get Jonathan back on, Lauren, would you mind going ahead? All
Yeah,
right,
that'll
so
be fine.
we'll circle back to Jonathan in a little bit once he's back. But Lauren is going to start us off with Where Boundaries Blur. It's a 20 by 16-inch acrylic painting on canvas. And if you want to go ahead and Uh, share with us about your piece.
All right, yeah. So when I first got accepted, I started going on walks with my children down the Tinker Creek Greenway. I also went just down the local rivers out in Rocky Mount and just kind of saw what was around.
Yep.
And then something that I typically do is just kind of basically I take in all the information and then I let my background brain do the work. And basically, that is just, it's a really interesting process where I have less control. um, and so after a few months, I started, or a few weeks, I'd say, I started doing some sketching and deers showed up quite a bit. And something that I love about living back in Virginia again is how the deers never, for me, get any more normal. They're exciting every single time I see them, just as exciting as the first time I saw them when I moved back from college. And so deers were featured a lot. How I just kind of let the sketchbook pages just kind of evolve. And this woman with a deer skull or a deer head, it kind of kept fluctuating, was something I kept going back to, but I didn't like how it looked. So I added in the leaves and it was almost there until I added a border. And as I added the border, I just kind of drew it sloppily on top of the sketch. And I realized the leaves coming and breaking out of the frame made a lot of sense for um, the Pilgrims at Tinker Creek books, as well as this prompt a little bit.
Mhm.
And as I was working on it, I got the leaves done. I was getting the skin of the deer and the woman painted in, and something seemed really like it was missing. The
Read that.
the spiders were one of the later addition, just as the orb weavers were coming out in the fall, and that's how I always know it's transitioning into fall. Is we see those in the woods. And so I kept seeing them over and over again. And so they seemed to balance the piece a little bit. One thing about this piece that did take a long time to figure out was the eyes.
Mm.
That was something that I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And everything else was pretty standard. It just kind of came once the initial sketch was finished. The initial sketch took a very long time to be finalized. And then, everything was going smoothly. The leaves, the base was fine. The skin is the skin. It's fine. I painted over those eyes probably 6 or 7 times. And I tried all manner of eyes. I tried all positionings because they really told the story. And the deer eyes weren't even finished at that point. I had done a doodle grid to transfer my sketch onto a bigger composition. And the deer eyes were really just the yellow background with the red pen that I'd used.
Mm.
But the way that it looked was really vibrant and lively. And my husband looked over and he said, why are you not just matching them? That makes the most sense. And I was really excited about that because it did make the most sense. And that's just kind of the process. It was really letting this piece speak to me. I listened to a lot of folklore and a lot of Charles DeLint at the time was somebody that I'd read a lot in high school and hadn't revisited his books. And they also have a whimsical nature aspect to them. And so allowing all of that to kind of mesh together is how this ultimately ended up happening.
Oh, it is very interesting, like you said in the beginning, that you let your background brain do the processing of the piece because it is very, I don't know if ethereal and almost bordering on esoteric. I don't know if that's the right word, but it does really give that vibe. So that it really shows through. Um, I forgot to mention for everyone else joining us today, if you have anything you would like to respond to that the artists have said about their work, feel free to either raise your hand on Zoom or just write in the chat and then I can read it. We can, this is the goal of this all is for it to be more of a conversation than anything else. So please feel free. Um, yeah, it is. Ben's got his hand raised. Please go ahead.
Well, you're probably going to get to this, and if you do, I'm sorry. But I think it's really very interesting how all the other parts of nature, other than the human, seem to bust out of the frame, but the human seems very contained within the rectangle. Was that intentional, or is that just something that's speaking to me?
That was something that I played with on and off, but there wasn't a really good way to break the frame with the composition that was there from the sketch. And so that's kind of how we ended up with the human staying completely within the frame with everything else coming out.
Are these leaves a specific type of plant?
They were, I'm trying to remember what they were. Usually it's specific. This one was what I could find the most references for this
Sure,
one.
yeah. No, I only ask just because I know you said you like to walk along the creek and kind of use what you saw, and so I wondered just if there was
No,
any particular plant.
that would have been lovely. It was basically I needed enough repetitive leaf shapes that I could reference to get an idea of it. This was
Yeah.
probably my first, I'd say it's, I don't draw leaves often, so they stress me out. It's my first really complex composition that has this much layering. And I think I've only done leaves that are layered maybe 2 or 3 other times.
Well, it's very effective.
Thank
I
you.
wouldn't
Yeah.
know.
I talked to an artist months before this piece, and she had done a book cover with beetles, and so this face was coming out, and then there were all these beetles. It might have actually been a album cover, but regardless, and we had been talking for years at this point, and I asked her, I said, how do you do this? Well, how does that work? Because I don't enjoy repetitive shapes. I do not enjoy a lot of detail outside of the figures and animals that I typically draw. And she told me it's basically just repetition. You get in the habit of understanding the shape and then you just repeat it over and over again. And so this was the first one that I actually attempted that on. And she later came on and commented and she goes, "This is it. You did it." I was like, I'm so glad you noticed. Because it was specifically her direction that she's Jana Heidersdorf, by the way. But it was her direction that led me to just attempting it. It was a little intimidating, but I do think it worked out really well for the piece, and it's what I called for. So it was just like, well, we're gonna just jump in.
That's awesome. Yeah, there is something about working to a prompt. The constraint also like somehow makes you more creative.
Yeah, the
Sometimes,
time
or like
limit.
go out on a limb. Sorry.
No, you're right. The time limit really was helpful. Usually my pieces have at least one ugly stage. This one had at least 3.
Oh.
And so there were so many times that I just wanted to scrap it and just start over on something else. But the further I got, the less time I had. And just coming up with the idea that fit right took enough time that it was just like, well, listen, you're going to have to make this work and it's going to be on display for a year. So ideally it should look hopefully nice. So the ugly stages were really intense, but having that deadline kind of helps push through the awkward stages and also push through the learning curve of just we have to figure it out. Or just
Mhm.
it's going to work. It will work. Let's make it happen. So
I'm glad I'm not the only one that has a consistent, like several ugly duckling stages of her paintings. That's heartening to hear.
oh yeah, no, from my peers, this is a normal thing, but I forget it every time. And it's just like, oh, I'm trash. Everything I make is trash. And then it works out and it's like, oh, this is okay.
Maybe I am competent.
Maybe. I remember returning to this after it was done the next day because I always give it a sleep and some break. And I came back and I went, oh, okay, this will work. And that's when you know it's done and you just don't touch it anymore.
Um, One thought I had as you were describing uh, the learning curve with the leaves, and that I think it's really fascinating that you chose a shape that echoes the deer head. It's very, very compositionally sound. I don't know if that was on purpose, but it looks really good.
The leaves, when I was placing them, if I remember correctly, I did the sketch and then I found a bunch of reference images and then I just compiled them so that they would flow.
Mhm.
And I wanted to make sure that nothing was to the point where it drew your eye away. Um, so thank you. That helps. That was something that was really intentionally worked on to try and mimic the variety of nature, but also try and get the flow correctly where you don't get stuck down in like a corner of part of it.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Um, if anybody else would like to chime in, please feel free. We'll probably turn it back over to Jonathan momentarily. Feel free to write in the chat also. I've got it open here.
I'll say I think it's probably really helpful to have a plan like that because whenever I draw something, like it's literally just a mess of scribbles until I get the shape that I want, and then I'll erase whatever's not supposed to be there. So it's probably a good tip for me is to try to plan things out a little more.
Yeah, I really have been leaning more into doing Photoshop composition to try and get the overall image to be more complete. Mostly because even when I do like a sketch, trying to get the proportions correct can be challenging. I know when I first did the sketch for this, the deer head was much larger, and I started looking into deers, and they are massive, but their heads are not. Um, and so I even pulled out some skulls I have, and that was when I was just like, oh no, I miscalculated size a little bit. And so from this point, what I learned from this piece was starting with actual photos, cutting them up, manipulating them, changing the lighting, whatever I need to do, drawing on top of it digitally has been really helpful. Only to a degree, I still find that doing sketches is helpful to find out what it looks like in your style and what your eyes are seeing and interpreting. Because at one point, I did in a later piece make some changes that I thought made better sense with the narrative. And when I did just a sketch of that one like section of the painting, it read very strongly as horror, which was not quite like I don't mind that interpretation, but it wasn't what I was going for. And I was like, oh no, that's for a different thing. We can keep that section elsewhere. And so I kind of like to bounce between the two. And then just, I'm a really big fan of doodle grids to be able to take the final mashup, which for this one, it was a few leaves photoshopped in, the head with a bunch of different like face features because I couldn't quite find what I'm looking for. So I was, the overall face and shading here, but these eyes and kind of stretching and pulling it where I wanted it to go. And then this deer um, image that I found on top of the sketch, and then I made that transparent so that I could put it over top of the canvas and see where it should go. Um, so that I didn't have as much distortion because I drew this out probably 3 or 4 times. My daughter has a piece of it hanging up in her room that she's watercolored all over because it kept distorting from standing versus sitting. It just would get stretched out. And so the doodle grid kind of like locked in the pieces
Oh, I hate
and
when that
helped me.
happens. I know exactly what you mean.
I have gone with water soluble pencils, so like watercolor pencils, to do doodle grids from here on out with anything that's larger, because it's too big for like this one was 16 by 20. This and 18 by 24, they're too large to use my computer screen as a light box. Usually I just put up my like my thumbnail sketch, I'll make it bigger. I will increase the contrast if the lines are really dark, and then I'll do a really, really loose tracing because it's not really accurate anyway. So might as well just, this is approximately where things go. But with this one, it was too large to try and do that. So being able to use that technology and transfer it more seamlessly was also a big, huge, huge step in making this work successfully.
Oh, that's neat to hear about your process with the digital sort of compilation. I did the exact same thing for my piece for this show. So I love
Nice.
hearing your
Yes.
descriptions. I was like, oh, it's not just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And as you were saying, the size of things relative to one another, it's like the human eye knows when it's wrong. And so yeah, having that reference and being able to compile it between a lot of different images, if you don't have it to look at directly, is so, so valuable.
It is.
We have a few comments for you. I just wanted to read from the chat. Rachel Pence writes, the leaves are awesome and look very intentionally placed. So dimensional.
Thank you.
Isabel Myers writes to us, hi, joining from the library. So that's why my camera is off today. The spiders in the leaves are so striking. I actually didn't see them at first because I was looking at the person and the deer. I think it gives the painting a very dynamic quality. Feels like they're crawling out of the negative space. This is a wonderful work.
Thank you.
And Corey's compliments the spiders as well. I also like them.
They're so lovely. I have been painting spiders since high school, and I stopped for a really long time. And now that I've reawoken it, it's like, what can I add spiders to? They're so lovely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much of the background. It's really, really interesting to hear your process, and it adds a lot of extra life to the piece, knowing those many, many background layers.
Yeah, thank
um,
you.
I want to give Jonathan some time to talk about his piece, so I'm gonna call him back. Jonathan, I've got you here via your phone number. I did have to mute you. Apologies, just because there was a bit of a background noise. Would you be able to unmute? There we go. I'm working on it. Mm, sorry, we're just working on the sound. Hey, Jonathan, if you're here, would you mind unmuting your mic? Unfortunately, I can't do it on my end.
All right, we had a little struggle with the unmuting part, but we
Oh,
got it
no
figured
worries
out.
at all. We can hear you well now. Excellent.
I'm a much better welder than I am a phone user.
Oh, no, and Zoom it's a lot. But we're glad to have you back. So I've got your PowerPoint, your piece up on the PowerPoint. If you want to go ahead and tell us about it. Just,
Yes, the sculpture is like I was saying, Roanoke natives, pickler frog. I did lots of research on the different kinds of frogs in the area and the different kind of plants and insects. And I settled on the pickler frog because I learned it was a poison frog. I didn't know that Virginia had poison frogs.
neither did I. Judging by
I
a few
did
other
not
faces in the
realize that.
chat, I don't think many of us knew.
So get my phone plugged in so we don't run out of battery. There we go. But the pickler frog often is misidentified as a leopard frog, and the difference is pickler frog has square spots on his back, and leopard frog has round spots on the back, and they live in the same area, and lots of different differences in their behavior. The pickler frog in the summertime gets out into tall grass and lives and kind of gets away from the water more. But in the winter, it comes back to the water to kind of dig in and hang out. And then we have the eastern amber fly, and that's a big dragonfly, and it's I picked him out because he was kind of colorful looking.
The color looks
the whole
beautiful
premise
against the muted greens. Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say it's very pretty.
No, thank you. And then we have a American white lily pad there, and I didn't put a flower on that one, but if you were to have flowers on the lily, they'd be white. There's different types of the water lilies, but that one would be a white one. And then I put the common cattails there to have something for the dragonfly to sit on. But the reason I named it Hidden in Plain Sight was, everything, until you sit down and really look for it, something like that frog you'd never see. He's very camouflaged.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose of his spots and everything, kind of like a leopard or what have you. It's a very camouflaged looking critter. You didn't really have to sit and pay attention to see that. Whereas the dragonfly is kind of in your face. It's bright colored and it moves fast and zips and zaps. And so I thought that was a good name.
They're also kind of hard to see too, because they only stop for a moment before they're back hunting in the air.
They're all over. And I kind of took a representation on this sculpture for, kind of the elements of the earth. The dragonfly kind of lives in the air. The water lily lives in the water. The cattails kind of live right on the edge of the land and water. And the frog kind of goes between all of those, particularly that frog. He goes up on the land a whole lot, and then he's kind of winters near the water. So that's why I picked those particular
That's wonderful. And they're
printers
also
out.
visually striking against one another. So I'd love this piece so much.
And the frog, if you look at him closely, his back legs and his front legs too were actually cut out flat and then twisted. So if you look at his back foot, you can really see the twist in his back foot. That was actually
Hold on, I'm gonna see
can
if I can
imagine
zoom my
drawing his leg out.
hold on. No. Sorry, John. I'm trying to zoom in on my little PowerPoint. Oops.
But his foot, and you do that hot. I cut that out with the oxyacetylene torch and heated it up like where the wrist part would be and twisted it, and it gave it a really cool little shape there. I just twisted it and didn't really hammer on it or anything, and it kind of did what I thought it should look like naturally.
That's so
And
neat.
all of the little pieces are actually bolted on from the bottom. So like the frog is a separate bolt and the cattails are a separate bolt. So you could actually loosen those and turn it, and it could look totally different, switch positions with them. And you could make it, look different every day if you wanted to.
That's really interesting.
And-
Yeah, see, and it's so seamlessly assembled, and the bolts are very hidden. I would never know. I remember taking a pretty close look at it in person when we were putting everything up for the show. So
Well, I've always been impressed with folks that can paint a straight line, and I can't. So I take my sculptures apart to paint them. So I don't have to struggle on getting the paint on one part and not the other. So
I'm sure it makes moving them easier too, especially if it's a larger one.
oh yeah. Well, particularly when you're handling one piece at a time, it's on my YouTube channel. I've got my one of the latest sculptures I did. It's called the Three Sisters, and it's the corn, bean, and pumpkins. The way the Indians would grow their crops. I taught agriculture for 20 years, so that kind of stuff interested me. And but the way I did that sculpture, it doesn't look like it would come apart, but every bit of it comes apart, and I actually have a video showing how it comes apart and how I built it. And again,
Yeah, sorry,
did that.
I opened up a new window really quick just so I could drop get your YouTube link and drop it in the chat for everybody.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I'd love for them to be able to see it.
But, and I use mainly recycled materials for that particular sculpture. Mainly things I had already laying in my shop, little bits of this, little piece of that, and even the bolts. When I purchased the house and shop that I live in, the gentleman that had passed away, his family just walked away, and so they left all of his old tools and his old bolts, and I grew up on a farm, so we never threw anything away, and this gentleman apparently didn't either. So I still use his stuff.
That's really neat. It's like an extra, as I was telling Lauren earlier, you're just those extra layers of behind the work gives it so much more interesting depth. That's really interesting. Oh, you've got a couple comments in the chat. I'll read them to you. Corey writes, yeah, it really looks like all one piece. Great work. And Isabel Myers writes, this is so beautiful. I love the story behind it and the research that went into choosing which plants and animals would be represented. I also thought the title was interesting because it appears that the frog and the dragonfly wouldn't necessarily be able to see each other from their positions in the sculpture. They're hidden in plain sight from each other. That's a really interesting observation. I actually wouldn't have thought that either.
Yeah. Very
And
good.
Ben Bazak writes, the frog's appearance seems to me to add intent to this sculpture and makes it more dynamic. Neat. If anyone wants to
Yeah.
join just verbally, it doesn't have to be through the chat. Please feel free, but I'm happy to read the comments. Um,
I wanted to say I love this. It makes me wish I had taken a welding class in high school, but I was when it was available to me, but I was way too intimidated. It was not something that girls were doing. And I was just wondering if like, I just think of this as such intense media. Did the contrast of the type of work you were doing with the subject kind of was that something that crossed your mind ever as you were creating this piece?
Well, I've taught welding in metal fabrication for a long time, so you know, I find it interesting to do something new. I never enjoyed, some people, they'll make particular kind of house trailer, or they'll put, horse trailer or whatever. They'll make that, and they'll make millions of dollars making the same thing over and over again. That never held any interest to me. I always, when I taught school, we always did a different project every year. Rarely ever did we repeat anything, and even from class to class, it was different most years, unless we had something really big we were working on. I find interest in figuring out how to make the item that we, whatever it is we're making. Like Little Frog was the first time I'd ever really tried to make a frog and get his feet and legs and everything to look, kind of like a frog's feet and legs. His eye, the frog's eye, is actually just one spot of weld. If you hold your welder still and pull the trigger and just hold it still, it'll make a little bump like that. And so that's how this eye is on there. And so I mean, it's things like that you're gonna have to figure out. The little dragonfly, his body is made by putting him in a drill, and got a fancy sander that I made that goes really fast and cuts really fast. And I put the piece of metal in the drill, the little round piece of metal, and he's tapered. Well, that's a hard shape to hammer out, but it's easy if you're spinning it like on a lathe, which I don't have. So I laid my drill up on that little sander, the metal on the little sander as the drill spun, and it ground down his body shape for me. And so like I said, I kind of find interest in figuring out how to make a particular shape or a particular item.
Thank you for sharing all of that with us. Really, really interesting. I think I can speak for the whole group. Most of us probably don't know very much, if anything at all, about your type of work, and so we're all very, very keyed in. Rachel, in response to you figuring out how to make the frog, just says you nailed it. And Cindy writes, this piece is so fun and there's so much to discover in it. Love it. I'm particularly intrigued by just your many years of working with the material has allowed, I guess, opened up interesting avenues for how to solve a particular problem. Like you said, with the frog's eye, just like holding the weld and just making the bubble, and knowing that it would do that. It's always interesting to see how expertise accumulates.
The weldings can be manipulated lots of ways. My students taught me a whole lot. I did a sculpture for Texas. It was a town in Texas, the Woodlands, Texas, and they wanted a sculpture of a park bench, but they wanted it to look like a stump coming out of the ground, and then the stump, the tree being the bench. And so when I did that, it's all out of steel, but I used the welding technique that my students usually started out with, which is holding the arc too far away and going too fast. Kind of makes little bumps on your metal, it doesn't make a nice even bead. It makes a bunch of little bumps. So I used that technique to put bark on the tree stump, and everybody just goes wild about that bench, when they see pictures of it or whatever, because it does look like bark. I just did them in rows like bark on a tree would be.
I'm gonna see if I can find it because if I recall
It's on
from
the YouTube.
looking through your YouTube, yes, it oops, that was my little window. That one really stood out to me. I'll see if I can find it.
While you're looking
But-
at that, Sharon has a question in the chat.
Oh,
Sorry
sure.
if I missed it, but did you say what type of welding technique you used? She did classic arc welding years ago and doesn't know any other techniques.
Well, arc welding kind of covers a lot of things. There's basically three popular techniques. There's a couple more, but they're not real popular. But there's MIG welding, there's TIG welding, and then there's stick welding. If you're going to make a building or you're going to repair something, like you're going to repair a trailer or something that you're going to pull down the road or build a car, typically you're going to do stick welding if it's structural. Stick welding is the hardest welding to perfect, but it's the strongest and the cheapest to get into. You can buy a stick welder off of Amazon for just a couple $100 and a handful of rods, and you can go to weld it. The process that I used on my sculptures, all of them that I have on YouTube up to this point, is MIG welding, and it's probably the easiest welding because stick welding involves that you have a stick that's about, 14 inches long. You put it on your electrode holder, and then you start your weld. But as you're welding, the stick is melting away, so you always got to be pushing your hand down towards the weld and moving forward and making circles, and it's a whole lot to do at once. Whereas a MIG welding, the wire comes out of a gun. You put the gun at a certain spot, like maybe a half an inch off of where you want to weld, and you pull the trigger and the wire runs out, and you hold the gun at that same level. You're not having to go down towards the weld all the time. You hold the gun at the same level, and it's like a gun. Where you point it is where the weld goes. And so if you need to make swirls to cover up the gap, that's what you do. And then TIG welding is great for drummers because you've got a rod along looks like a clothes hanger straightened out in one hand. You have your TIG gun in the other hand, and then you have a foot pedal that cuts the power on and off. And the more you push on the foot pedal, the hotter it gets. And so it's a whole lot going on in TIG welding. So I choose the laziest welding.
Hey, work smart, not hard.
Well, I mean, it's just the easiest. I'm not building something structural. I'm not having to build it and get so deep into metal. And the stick welding is really for thicker metals, and it's much more versatile. MIG welding and TIG welding, you have to have specific gases for specific metals, specific wire for specific metals. Whereas the stick welder, you can just buy 4 or 5 sticks of particular the stick welder. The electrodes come in all kinds of varieties, and you can just buy a few of them. If you have a piece of cast iron you want to weld, you just buy your 4 or 5 sticks that weld cast iron. If you want to weld something that's a particular strength, like the numbers on the actual electrodes mean things. The 6011, 6013, well, the 60 is 60,000 pounds per square inch. That's what that weld will hold. And then you're going to be building structural steel, like in a building, you'd use 7018s, and it's 70,000 pounds per square inch. So, but you can just buy a couple of those rods. You don't have to buy, a $300 tank of gas and a whole 10-pound spool of wire to put in your machine. You can just buy,
a shed with some recyclable materials like you have.
Yeah.
Sorry
But
to interrupt you. I just wanted to let you know that I've got I think, which is the bench that you were talking about. I found this very beautiful, so I wanted to show everyone. Um, I don't know if everyone can see it up here, and I found somewhere in the video the where you can see. Oh, here it is. Here's the texture. So visual for everyone. I apologize for interrupting you, but I just wanted to let you know Jane Gabrielle has written in the chat, can you teach a welding class? And co-signed by me and Rachel.
well, I actually do teach adults now,
And
and
Isabel.
I teach mainly blacksmithing, but we can incorporate welding in that too. See, blacksmithing is a lot of folks have interest in making. Everybody wants to make a knife to start with, but it's so much more to it than that. But that's generally what folks try to do first. But yeah, absolutely, we can teach you welding, no problem.
All right. Well, maybe Doug and I will be in touch about this because there is a number of us interested. People sounding off in the chat. Cindy, very
Sure.
interesting.
And
Wow.
And let me, before we sign off with Jonathan, let me brag on him a little bit. We've had another piece of his down on the art walk in Elmwood Park, and it was wildflowers, and they were Virginia wildflowers, and a nice bouquet of them. They were beautiful and fashioned some from farm implements. And in Roanoke, Blue Ridge, Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge likes to say that we are the Metro Mountain Mix. And so my greatest surprise of 2025 was opening the call for the Larger Than Life Elmwood Park exhibition. And there was Jonathan's entry, and it wasn't wildflowers or something nature oriented, and I know how closely connected he is to nature, but it was more in that metro side of things, and it was a red stiletto. And you can go down on the art walk now and see Jonathan's red stiletto.
Hold on. I'm pulling it up on the artwork archive because I have seen it.
And that
There
was
it is.
probably one of the hardest things I had to make. Everybody sees a shoe, the other artist was talking about the deer's head and the size and the shape, and people know what it's supposed to look like. Well, lots of people have seen a deer, and they know the size and scale that it's supposed to be, but everybody has a shoe. Everybody can put that in their hand
There we
and
go,
look
everyone.
at it, and that was one of the hardest things to make. Not in it that it was difficult to make the shape or to do the ratios to get the size and everything right. It was holding it together so I could weld it. My process is I basically beat it down and get it close enough where I can put a clamp on it to clamp it that last half an inch, and then I weld the seams. Well, the shape of that shoe is round in every dimension. And so you don't have, when you put a clamp on a ball, it just wants to squeeze off every way, And so I was having to weld on extra pieces of metal just so the clamp could bite onto the thing. And then I have to grind all that off and take it off. So, I mean, it was extra work just to clamp it up to weld it.
Well, we love it. I've got a picture of it up, and the city has a few different pictures up on the online archive. And I think the one I have up does show just how intricate the structure is, like the main pieces that are curved. Jane Gabrielle is asking, what kind of paint is on the stiletto?
The stiletto has it was taken all the way down to bare metal, and when you get a new piece of metal, it has forge scale on it. That's where they've heated it up and run it through the mill to make it, that particular size. So you have to grind all that off. It's forge scale is basically like rust, and so you grind all that off. Then I double primed it with rust resistant primer, which is made by Rust-Oleum, and then then I put a base coat on it of Rust-Oleum, and then any detail work, like on the flowers and the frog and stuff, I do that again with Rust-Oleum, but I'll do that with a brush or some other technique. Sometimes I use a sponge or different techniques.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad Jane asked that because I had also wondered about your piece for Pilgrims at the Creek, what kind of paint that is. Again, I wouldn't know anything about painting metal. So this has been so informative. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and your work. Really appreciate it. And sorry again for all the trouble with getting you on the call, but I'm really glad that we were able to do that.
Yeah, we struggle with technology down here, we're in the Piedmont, and we just got Brightspeed came through and put us a new high speed cable through or whatever, and they just hooked it up the other day. I have a brand new computer. First time I ever tried to get on Zoom with these things, and sorry, it's not working out for us.
No.
Just so.
It's all good. So one of my last things that I have, I guess this will just be sort of a parting question because we ended up having great conversation and it's 6:55. So I had a little discussion question for everybody. So I'm borrowing it from Pilgrims at the Creek, the exhibition questionnaires that the artists all did because I thought it was just a really great question. Parting thoughts in honor of the new year. What questions has Pilgrims at the Creek or similar work inspired you to explore next? So, things to think about for our coming year. And finally, I've got a picture of the little rat cards that we should be getting in soon. That'll be posted around town, advertising the exhibit. And a reminder that next week, January 20th, we have another 4 artists presenting, this time in person. We've got the Noel C. Taylor Municipal Building here. And I've put some advertising graphics in the weekly newsletter as well. So if you need any of that information, it should be all of those places. So thank you again so much to our artists this evening, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It was really appreciate having you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Of course. All right, Doug, anything else before we leave?
No, just thank you for your leadership, Natalia, and thank you to the artist. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody. If you want to linger on and answer that question, feel free to. There can be a little chit chat here, just like if we were in the room together.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to stay.
Yeah, everybody have a great night.
Let's have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank
Good
y'all.
night.